Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Thursday, April 29th. Another day of big earnings out of the way, and another day of a little bit more whipsaw and really decent back and forth price action. Before we get to the overall market, let's talk about Amazon. Good numbers. All right, so you could see a couple. Where's the major headlines here? You know, net sales. They crushed like the net sales. I mean, 110 to 116 billion dollars estimated 108. That looks, from my eye, that looks pretty darn strong. And I think they're up about what 3 or 4%. From a technical aspect, you know, something that we were looking at towards the end of the day was on the weekly chart. If price kind of remains where it is after hours, you're going to see, you know, from again a very technical point of view, which is what I basically try to bring out every day. And let's just show you where this derives from. So this is the weekly chart, right? And this is the value area for this year, for the whole year, right? And again, you know, longer term trend is what you kind of look at the weekly chart for, right? Remember what these value areas are for. It's from the volume profile from the last year, but with, you know, with statistics behind it, right? So, you know, this becomes an important level. So this 30, what is it, 35? Let's see if I can zoom in. I don't have the label. 3502. And where is this trading? 3600. So if we can manage to kind of close out the week. And by the way, if you're long Amazon, congratulations to you. You know, it's kind of tough when a name is pretty inconsistent around earnings, which is I think what we went over yesterday. Right? Here's the earnings history for Amazon. It is not a very consistent company around earnings. Again, always looking at the price the price trend, you know, rather than the actual numbers. You know, it's very difficult. A lot of times you see good numbers and the stock sells off, you know, or something that they didn't put out in their guidance. But really, at the end of the day, to me, all that really matters is the price action, right? Whether the stock goes up or whether it goes down. That tells me more than, you know, what the actual numbers are, believe it or not. So if we get above, if we stay where we are now, that would be a breakout of value. And you know, remember that a lot of these reports too, you know, what we try to do for the most part is just kind of for this earnings season and generally all earnings seasons is just to see what names are, you know, going to be, you know, the names to kind of that could have some momentum behind trading next. You know, rather than try to put on a bunch of earnings trades, my approach is more, you know, I do try to do those to participate, but my philosophy is more, you know, find the names that are going to actually, you know, maybe start to have momentum as we get out of this. So, you know, you look at this pattern, and the other thing, you know, besides Amazon being inside value for the whole year, which again, you know, if you look in the top left, what does that mean? Range bound, right? So now that if we start to get in price discovery, you know, maybe we could see Amazon really begin to trend again. And you know, remember for the better part of you know, half of 2020, you know, Amazon was not trending, right? It made a high at 35.52, and that was basically it for Amazon, you know, and that happened all the way back in, you know, back at the end of August. And then you had you know, about 4 months of chop in this name. So, you know, this would possibly be something to get excited about. I am long this name in the TTG Trend Portfolio. I've been long Amazon since I came up with that trend portfolio. So, you know, I've been sticking with it in this name. So let's talk about the price action. So again, you know, where are we? 3609. So again, nice, up about 3-4%. It looks like, which was right around the implied move for the name. The implied move. Where's our earnings channel? The implied move was 4.1%, and the range was, look at that, they got it on a dime there. In terms of what the market makers were implying, 3607 was the range. So Yeah, right. Pretty nice job by the market makers there. All right, so let me go back to the price action for the day. I don't think I mentioned the risk disclaimer, but risk disclaimer, everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. This video is for education purposes only. And if the video looks a little blurry to you, YouTube takes a while to render the high def version. So just give it some time. It does take them time to do that. All right, let's talk a little bit about the price action, right? And Apple, I think a lot of people had questions about the Apple price action today. I'll give you my take, right? Again, we talk about, the numbers, and they had these huge numbers. But I think that price action, again, looks forward. It's forward-looking, right? It doesn't matter what you did last quarter, in my opinion. I mean, it matters somewhat, but I think really for the price action, want to see what the company's going to do in the future, not in the past. So it really depends. It depends what products, in my opinion, and what things that Apple's going to bring out in the next, what their future plans are. And I think that's why the price action was a little bit of a dud today. I mean, very much a dud. This thing traded up to, 139 yesterday. So I think, I know people like to argue about valuation and that much, but I think it's really, you have to ask yourself if you're excited about what they're bringing out in the future. All right. Is the next iPhone going to wow you, or and what is the next thing, right? I mean, we've had for a while now. Obviously, everybody's going to use their phone and have a phone, but the AirPods, or whatever the name is for those were nice. I use those. I love those. But what's the next thing that Apple's going to bring out, right? If it's going to be just another, sorry to be negative here, but if it's going to be another iPhone, with another, camera, or, another version of an iPad, I don't know. Maybe that's not all that exciting. So I think that's what it comes down to. And that's how I always, that's how I've learned to look at it, over time. Facebook, they managed to kind of stay, around the highs. So we could look at the Facebook chart here just for a second. But you do have a breakout now in Facebook. And kind of an odd-looking candle for the day, but still, that's a breakout. And now, you're looking at, out of the FANG stocks, Facebook, Google, and Amazon, pretty much crushed it, I would say, right? So it's impressive price action, right? So that is those names. In regards to the S&P price action. Some interesting things, and I do think that there's many takeaways from earnings season, but one of the major things for me is what are we going to see after earnings season? Or is there going to be some new trends, some new market leaders? How is that going to, maybe a little bit of the changing of the guards? So again, these are the things that I really look to observe and take advantage of after earnings season. So we'll just kind of have to take note of that, and some things, we certainly have seen some names that have been pretty strong sell off a little bit after the number, and then by the end of the day, they're higher, right? SHW was Sherman-Williams was a good example of that. So that's kind of what we want to see. Sometimes when there is one of these reactions where the stock comes in a little bit, what name, how do buyers or sellers react to that? Do they scoop up, the name? So this looks like a name, for example, that was kind of scooped up. And we saw this probably about with, a good number of other cases too, where where the name initially sold off. Look at Nucor, by the way. Right? We talked about how Nucor was all bunched up, gave a little bit of a false move down, and is now out to new highs. So that's kind of, that's exactly what I'm referring to is, so pay attention to not only, what the name does, right, in the after hour session, but what it does in the next couple days too, because there's some surprises like this. All right. So that's my game plan, as always, during earnings season and these end of months, which tomorrow is end of month, I really try as much as I can to kind of lay off taking a lot of risk. I do a lot of trades to kind of stay in the game and participate, but the last couple, I've just learned from the last couple end of months that they're really difficult, right? And if you could try not to give back your gains from earlier in the month, then you can start the month fresh. And usually, not every, and again, it's not every month, it's not 100%, but we've seen, the beginning of the months have been very strong because new money is put to work, new like pension money, right? Big, institutional money tends to go in the beginning of the month, and then there's some withdrawals usually, towards the end of the month. So that's the plan. I mean, I've had a decent month, right? I was whining a little bit about my my March, right? And I've talked to a few traders about this, how my March really helped me get back to being a really disciplined trader. And this month I'm up about another 20% in April, and I'll have those numbers on the weekend. I go to get my my second vaccine tomorrow, so I'll be out in the afternoon tomorrow. But I'll put those P&L numbers out on Twitter on Saturday morning, provided that E-Trade has them updated. But yeah, I should be up somewhere in the neighborhood for year to date, back up about 20%. Sorry if I said that wrong. All right, so yeah, and that kind of gets me back to where I want to be. Given this year and the rotation and the choppiness, I'm not thrilled with those numbers, but I'm on track, for what I want to achieve for 2021. All right, so looking at the other performance, the VIX kind of spiked up today. IWM did not fully recover. The NASDAQ finished green, but giving back those gains. And by the way, I don't really know why we were up so much, right? We've talked about how there hasn't been that big of an overnight move over the last couple weeks. One of the things I've been talking about in the trading room every day is that over the last 30 years or so, the majority of money is made in the overnight market in terms of the indices, right? It's just how it is. You can look that number up on Twitter. Sediment Trader always seems to put that out, that a lot of money is made, buying the close and selling the open is much better trade than the other way around, right? But in the last few weeks, we really haven't seen much of an overnight move. It's been like you come in and it's up or down 10 basis points, referring to the S&P. Last night was different, and I was watching this, and I'm like, well, I don't really understand. I get it. Apple reported good numbers, and Facebook, but I didn't really understand why we were up that much. And then if you look at what happened, it just invited sellers, I think, to kind of come in. And the market got smacked till about 12 o'clock. And, I don't know if it's sell programs. We've talked about how we really haven't seen too many sell programs. Maybe it just enticed the being in a 3-day really tight range as this was, perhaps it enticed some sellers to kind of come in who needed to do some selling. That's my explanation for the price action that we saw after the open. But like I said, pre-market, I said I don't really understand why we're up this much. Nevertheless, we kind of return right back. And by the way, where did we find support? Right at the top of value. All right, so the Qs looked a little bit different. Again, basically very close to where we started the week for the Qs. So, earnings season, end of month, that's, this is not bad considering, sometimes it's worse than just chop. IWM took out that upside virgin point of control from back here, right? This is the value area for this period. So notice how we tagged that and sold off. And, I'll tell you, that's been the story in a lot of names. We've been looking at a lot of names, and, a lot of names I've been saying, hey, well, we got to get through this virgin point of control. They very much act as resistance. I'll give you a name that I was watching in the beginning of the day was Unity Software, right? And I said, hey, and I've said this name a couple times in these videos over the last week, and I said this thing has to get through this 106 VPOC. Take a look at what it did today. So maybe now that it's been taken out, once they're removed, sometimes price action can then overcome them. But this is a good example, right? And I heard, saw a couple of traders this morning say, hey, maybe it's the day for Unity Software to kind of get out of the range. Nope, hit that thing on a dime, and I've provided this level, like I said before, in the end of day. Probably, I think I talked about it in yesterday's end of day video, and there you go. Right, so again, 106 will be the level to watch for that name, but again, gets rejected. Once again, trying to move out of value. So that was just one example. The home builders were very strong today. So interesting what names did out, or what areas did outperform. Your home builders just continue to go. There was another name that reported today, CCS, which is a builder, I believe, out of Colorado. Look at this move, right? So very impressive. This is a name that's in the IBD 50, by the way. But nice move here, up 13%. They crushed it. This also helped the name that I've been long, GRBK. Right, they're getting close to back to the highs of where they were, and they report next week. So I'm going to have to figure out what to do with that position before earnings. But another small builder. This one I believe is in Texas. But yeah, very strong once again. The home builders. If you look at this ETF, just continues to cruise. Right, and again, one of your best areas of the market this year, and continues to just chug higher. All right, so that's the best. Consumer staples and utilities. Again, like talked about this earlier in the day, but I know the utilities are not sexy, but hey, if you can have some of your cash in something that goes up like this 1%, people, you're just not going to, not going to complain. I know it's not growth. I know it's not small cap growth, and that's where everybody still wants to be focused. But this thing came right into the 20-day moving average after a nice swing up, comes in, finds support, and up almost 1% for this session. So, I mean, we'll just kind of have to pay attention to some of these areas of the market, but a lot of defensive type areas rallied. Right, the banks did very well today too. Let's see, where did they finish? JP Morgan was a name that we talked about earlier in the week. I just didn't want to hold any calls, but this JP Morgan is now trying to break out. So if you're looking for a bank, right, it hasn't done much. It hasn't done anything since it reported earnings, and it's not like they reported bad earnings. So it did break value. Notice the value area for May is going to be very close because of the range, but you got to break higher. Break out of value, excuse me, for JP Morgan. I know some traders have been trading Goldman, which has been acting a little bit better too. Schwab, they kept on piling into calls. This is a name that's really seen a lot of call action over the last couple months. So, a lot of volume in calls today in Schwab. I'm not sure why somebody really likes this name, but hey, it's doing very well. Maybe because it just has a lot of areas of the business, right? Schwab, who did Schwab acquire? Some broker, I forget who it was. Sorry, it's just escaping me right now. So those were your strong areas of the market. What was not strong was your high beta stuff. Once again, your blockchain ETF was down 3%. Chinese internets were down 2.3%. Clean energy, metals and mining was interesting. That was down 3% for the day. I'm not sure if that's because gold miners, but try to push higher in the beginning of the day and got rejected. So we'll keep an eye on the metals and mining, XME. And then of course the ARC ETFs just continue to underperform. Now I know over the last couple of years they've been they've outperformed, but not this year. They're underperforming the S&P by 12%. 12% year to date they've underperformed. So it'll be something to keep an eye on, but I don't like how these charts look, to be honest, right? Look at the difference. Home builders, right? S&P trending, right? And we've talked about this now. I talk about how that the market has changed in 2021. It's very different than, we know that. I still try to tell traders every day that, watch your levels if you're going to participate. But I tried TTD today, right? And this thing, it actually came back, but some of these moves are they're vicious in this growth stuff. Hit 768, drops down 50 points. This is crazy. 1 5-minute bar. I got stopped out on this bar. 12 points. So it's really, not only are a lot of these growth areas underperforming, but they are so volatile. Right? No fight to it at the end of the day. ARK Innovation ETF. Right? And again, cannot get above. Every time it has tried to get out of value. So again, thank you, value areas. The MarketWebs indicator, beautiful. Failed here, and not even getting back up to the top of value. Right? And we've seen this in a lot of the growth areas of the market. So it's been tricky. It's been really tricky. A couple names that I'm watching in growth land. Hubs, right? It's one of my favorite software names. Now it gets complicated again because this name reports next week, but this name came right into the top of value. Not a huge bounce off of here, but all the software names, we talked about this pre-market. I said be careful of the software names today. ServiceNow, did not have a good earnings reaction at all. So had a lot of traders, again, it's our job to kind of look for trades every morning, but what I try to do every morning is say, hey, try to point people in the right direction where there might be better opportunities. Honeywell is another name, not exactly a growth name, but is another name that reported earnings and that kind of slid back here a little bit. And I'm kind of liking this little pullback here. It almost filled the gap. Right? So again, not the fastest moving name in the world, but just looking at possible trades, going forward, and now that earnings is out of the way, I do like the trend. Here's another one that was a little bit tough too. RTX finally broke out. We actually saw some strength in the aerospace defense ETF. One of the traders at Tribeca Trade Group brought this to my attention. Up 65 basis points, but again, out to new highs today. All right, guys, so we'll finish here. I always show my trades full transparency. I got a very small target in Mosaic, a trade that I put on for a lotto play, which was ET. Right, so I was able to take this off for some profits. Again, not a big trade, just a lotto. I like this EMR. I think this EMR is setting up. Again, has earnings next week. I like this click too. I added this trade. Nice green bar here, and not as low as volume as I'd like. I'd like to see a lower volume pullback, but I like the trend here. So I added that trade. And, a couple trades that I was in just hit trailing stops. I was long XOP. I was looking for a big winner out of my out of the last portion of the trade, which is fine, still a really profitable trade. We'll see. This energy, I haven't really been able to hold energy names for a long time, but I think the XLE energy ETF looks a little bit better than the XOP. And remember the difference. XLE is market cap weighted, so some bigger companies, versus XOP, which is equally weighted. But above the 50-day moving average, most likely will start the new month above value and above the 50-day moving average. So again, just have to go where, our job as traders, right? Being an objective trader is just to go where there's relative strength, go where there's some momentum in the market, and not get caught into really areas that are beaten up and that are too volatile too. Because if you get caught in one of these growth names right now, and you're not super quick. I mean, that TDD just moved so fast. If you don't have the right position size on, and if you're not watching it super closely, it doesn't take much for one of these names to ruin your day the way that they move. So I think that the area continues to be really tough for now. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Have a great night, and let's see if Giants draft somebody good. Rooting for offensive line or a pass rusher on defense. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.